Hi guys, my name is Joshua Morata. I'm a senior at Radford High School, and this is for an English project for my period 5 English class. And today I'm at Lana Lane Studios here to interview a special guest. He is a Japanese-American rapper, music producer, and activist. He's widely known in the underground hip-hop community as being one of the few multilingual MCs rapping in both Japanese and English. He's prominently known for working with late Japanese hip-hop producer Nujabes with songs that include Battle Cry, which is on the popular anime Samurai Champloo, Philo, and popular Love Sick Hexology, which is widely beloved by fans. Now, to get that out of the way, I want to mention that he is also a graduate from UC Berkeley, and his name is Shing02. How are you, Shing02?
Hey,
Right. So, I just want to ask you a couple questions in terms of your college experience, if it's okay.
Yeah.
If I could just ask you.
Fire away.
So, first of all, I'm just going to ask, what to you is your idea of coming of age? Like, what does it mean to you?
That's a very deep question.
Mm.
Coming of age, can you provide a little more background? What is it concerning?
Well, basically, we give our own interpretations. For me, example, like my interpretation of the term is like, growing up, and because I feel like nowadays, children, especially when they're reaching that point of adolescence,
Mm-hmm.
They're either bemused to that term or they're probably not likely ever going to use it. But it's what in your interpretation, how could you interpret that idea, that term, coming of age?
I mean, like I said, that sounds very, very broad and deep at the same time. Because, I mean, from my experience, my childhood was very, I had a variety of experiences. I grew up in Tanzania, London, then went back to Japan, and then California, and then even in California, moving from the Southern Bay Area to UC Berkeley was like a huge culture shock. So every time I moved, I had a huge, like a jolt, in my system. I was uprooted and basically had to, redo it all over again.
Right.
So in terms of me coming of age, was obviously discovering art and my interests, but I feel that we're all products of our environment, and even when I got to college at 18 years old, I was especially, shocked by the fact that kids that come from different areas, we're all at different levels of understanding and with culture, or how experienced they were consuming, certain kinds of music, or like basically some kids were way more advanced culturally than others.
Yeah.
Because most suburbs we only have Blockbuster, and then you go to movies and you bowl and that's it. Whereas some kids, they're already into making things and going to concerts, and they're like light years ahead of us.
Right. So it's more so like a difference in generations.
Location.
Right.
And whether you have access to certain education, not just in the school but outside of school.
Right.
Yeah, because when you're young and you obviously learn a lot from your extracurricular activities as much as you do at school, in life.
Right. Now, is it reasonable to infer that without motivation or a certain drive, it's difficult to finish college, or at least any form of education?
That's entirely up to you. Because people who are driven to finish, or people who are driven to go into another program, like say a master's, or they already work backwards from graduating, so they know exactly how many units they need to take in order to graduate, and not just finish school, but to place high in what they do. So it's really a matter of perspective.
Right.
For me, by the time my senior year rolled around, I had to take a break, so I actually took half a year off, the entire semester off, and then I worked, saved up some money, bought some equipment, then went back to school and finished.
Okay. Because there are some students, especially nowadays, with the growth of online school and other various educational programs, that they personally feel the need that it's not necessary to actually finish high school, college, whatever, and just pursue alternate forms. Do you think it's up to them personally if they feel like they should go for what they want?
In theory, yes, I totally agree with that, but at the same time, the college experience is something, it's far more than just the knowledge you obtain from reading textbooks and attending lectures.
Right. Okay.
So I'm glad I finished. And even though I did get a degree in electrical engineering and computer science, and I absolutely did not use it to this day,
Right.
it does somehow help, I mean, I don't know. Who's to say? What if I dropped out? Would it make a difference? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I really don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did anything inspire you to do what you do now, like in terms of hip hop, becoming an MC?
Yeah. So as I was growing up, I drew a lot.
Mm.
I did a lot of illustration. My idol is Osamu Tezuka. He's the godfather of manga and animation in Japan.
Right.
To me, he's still the greatest creator that came out from Japan.
Okay.
In terms of his scope and depth,
Mm-hmm.
of course you have many great manga and anime creators that came after him.
Right.
Like Miyazaki and Otomo and Toriyama and all these guys,
Mm.
right? But they are super talented in their own genre. But he was like so, beyond the scope of
Right.
manga.
Okay.
Well, if you haven't read his work, then you'll discover it if you.
I'll look into that.
Yeah. He's really good. So, that was my background. Yeah. So like drawing interest, and then the manga world. And when I started working with artists after I got to Berkeley, I started meeting my idols on the streets, right, at record stores, and the artists that I listened to in high school, I would become friends with them through my art.
Right.
Like I would draw for them, and eventually I would do like album covers, tape covers, magazine covers, flyers, you name it. I just did it all, and that was my introduction to the hip hop scene. And eventually, from just messing around with my friends at the dorms, freestyling and stuff, I was a complete novice at hip hop. I really didn't have much deep knowledge of it,
Right.
but I just got sucked into it, and then was taking it day by day from there on.
So basically, like you started out as an illustrator.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah,
Ah.
illustrator.
You were freelance as well.
Yeah, I mean graphic designer.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own T-shirt line. That was it. That was a life. Like whereas rappers would be on Telegraph selling their cassettes, I was on Telegraph selling my T-shirts.
Right.
That was fun.
Well, let me see. When it came to what you do now, was it your initial plan, if that makes sense? Like, if when you obviously, like you said, you were doing all these things for friends and other people, illustrating and stuff like that. When you got into like rapping, was it your initial plan or no?
No, I mean, I think it was all timing again, because at that particular time, like Japanese rap was still very much underground, and of course you had a lot of acts in Japan doing it already. But in my opinion, it wasn't close to the style that I felt very close to, which was like the West Coast kind of underground, really fast rap and improvising and very quick-witted, like and very deep. And that was the kind of stuff that I was influenced by. So instead of, for me, like listening to what was popular in Japan as far as hip hop, I tried to infuse what I loved in American hip hop and then translate it into Japanese.
Okay.
So that's how I kind of stumbled upon, doing like albums, and then eventually I started writing in English. So my first, personal project was let's create a Japanese album. Yeah.
Okay.
And then that kind of, one thing led to another, and that led to more exposure.
Now, you also not only being like a wildly renowned hip hop artist, but you're also heavily into activism. I know in some of your songs, "Black is Beautiful," "Japonica," "Pearl Harbor," just to name a few, there are elements where you actually like go deep within the activist vibe, so to speak. What is or was, or more prominently is, your initial motivation to partake in activism?
And again, I'm still gonna tie it into my Bay Area roots, because that's where I came of age as an MC. That's where I was educated, the importance of what rapping is, what emceeing is, which is to basically be a teacher, right? Not maybe in a scholarly academic way, but you're teaching something that you learned or you experienced in life. Right? And of course, the roots of hip hop is most of that came from the Bronx and other parts of New York where kids were basically documenting their lives, you know, and broadcasting it. Maybe initially just to their neighborhood to achieve neighborhood fame, but that grew and grew and grew, and it became like a global audience, as we all know. So that I applied the same thing for me. Like, what was I to talk about then? You know, was it really the experience of being Asian in America before even being Japanese? People are going to look at you as Asian, right? So the Asian experience and then the Japanese experience. And even though I could be considered Japanese American, I identified more with being Japanese in America. So that was really my start, you know, to talk about the Pearl Harbor experience, to talk about the internment, you know, and talk about what it's like to be an immigrant. You know, so I kind of wanted to get that out of the way before nobody considered me that I was just trying to rap to be somebody else, or just because I liked, you know, the hip hop look, or you know what I mean, on a superficial level. So again, being in the Bay Area and then being amongst all these peers who are just pure talent, right, in their late teens or early 20s, just creating such great, intricate works, you know, hieroglyphics, Focal Junction, all these guys. It was just mind-blowing to me, you know. So, but if you look at it, like, these are the children of the real civil rights activist generation. You know, we had friends whose uncles were like the Black Panthers, and, you know, these guys were wild and crazy, but they're very, very conscious at the same time. You know, it's not like, I don't want to say, but it's true, like, it's not like these, you know, today's kids that you see on the internet and stuff. They're like, oh, I don't care about old stuff, you know. They don't even care about history. They just want to, you know, represent themselves, and you know, that's not how we were raised. You know, we were raised to respect our elders and then build on top of it.
I think just to feed off what you said, nowadays, you know, especially young artists, you know, they're trying to make it in the music scene. Although regardless, it can be very hard. But you know, again, what you said, back in your generation, you tried feeding into what others' experiences were and what you've learned, whilst others, they just, well, again, nowadays children just try to stand up just for themselves. They try to make something out of them just for themselves, and there's no like deeper meaning out of it.
I mean, that's up to the audience too, you know. Like, if you're in the 90s and did something super whack, it would not be tolerated. You know what I'm saying? Like, but now it's almost like the opposite. You do something ignorant and celebrate it. And then, even though maybe the, you know, the gatekeepers of the culture, they might not approve of it, but it doesn't even matter anymore because it's so pop, and as long as it catches the attention of the masses, it's considered okay. You know, you can just say the most ignorant stuff and then put a beat underneath it, and it's considered hip hop, but that's not what I consider to be hip hop.
I got you.
That's just like, you know.
You feel as though hip hop has a more deeper meaning to it.
Well, it is
than most people think.
It is. That's what it is.
Because nowadays, you know, coming from, you know, what I hear at school, you know, a lot of these people are blasting music that usually involve like degrading women, money, just like overall misogyny, just overall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like denying the existence of it or the appeal of it. You know, it just, can you call it hip hop is all I'm saying. You know. Of course, everybody and anybody, even real rappers, can make a song that appeals to hedonism and, you know, just partying it up. You can do that, and there's a time and place for it.
Of
course. Maybe on the dance floor, maybe at the club, you know. But if that's the only thing you're putting out, that's kind of sad. You know.
I feel.
I mean, so like I said, like I said that hip hop is like a school in a way, right? So imagine if you went to school, paid tuition, and the only thing in your textbooks was how to party, and that's not gonna, like, you know, help you in life.
You feel like that would be like for like the newer generations, because like that's how hip hop is nowadays. You know.
I mean, that's where the cycle is generated. You know, people create content that appeals to those audiences, and those audiences buy that.
Okay.
And then just self-perpetuate.
Right.
You know, because the music is driven towards the clubs and then the festivals, and the music isn't really geared towards educating people anymore.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty deep actually. Wow. Now, in one word or in one sentence, your pick, how would you describe your overall college experience?
My college experience was very diverse because, again, half the time, of course, I was in school, you know, learning, studying, and even taking summer schools. So it was very time consuming, and it was rewarding too, of course. But the other half was spent outside the campus, you know, where I was juggling my interests in doing graphic design and starting to create music.
Right.
So, yeah.
Did you ever go back and forth with, you know, at one portion you have to do with your schoolwork. Once you got everything done, you know, were focusing on music. Were you able to balance like two of those at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I tried as much as I can, but like I said, you know, I did take a semester off before I finished,
Right.
just so I can concentrate a little bit more to at least set up my environment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I worked and got my keyboard sampler so that I could, you know, do more on my off time. Whereas if I didn't have the correct equipment, the right tools, I wouldn't be able to do anything. You know,
Right.
I would have to wait until I graduated, and I thought I couldn't afford to do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. There's some of these questions are actually kind of like, they seem rather repetitive, and I don't want to have to do that. So I'm going to go to the last question. What advice can you give for students who are in high school that have little to no idea with what they want to do in the future? What can you?
Well, number one, I would say there's nothing wrong with that. That you have no idea, which is fine. It just means that you have a blank slate, and it's kind of, you know, fun that you don't know what you're gonna do. But I don't know. I think you should at least though know what you're interested in doing or what you think you're good at.
Right.
Right? Because at age, you know, 17, 18, you're entering college. You have a lot of experience, you know, of things that you have entertained yourself with, or, you know, you're into athletics, or you're into organizing people, or, you know, you already have like a lot of strong characters when you're in high school. So you should have a general idea of the direction that you want to go to, you know.
Now, hearing what you said there, it kind of prompted me to think back to when I went to one of your shows back in January, which, if I may sidetrack for a little bit, was the very first time I was introduced to Scholar. It was dope. But during the show, you had a moment where you got everyone's attention, you got the whole crowd's attention before you even cued the band to play Lovesick Part 3. You made a speech, and during that speech you mentioned the lines, "Time flies when you're having fun, but time warps when you're in love." Me personally, I have never heard that saying. It was very foreign to me, but it resonated with me for a long time, and I've been using that as a reference to, as a form of inspiration, something to read back upon. Two questions in relation to that statement. Do you believe that that alludes to your answer, and also for those who do not get that statement, you know, the time flies thing, how else would you interpret it?
I mean, it is up to interpretation, but I was speaking in context of you create something out of pure interest or pure love, then it kind of transcends time. That's where the warping is, right?
Okay.
Like you have a very intense experience, whether you're in love with somebody, or you're in love with one thing, or you love the scenery, you can always remember it like it was yesterday. And that's where it's like almost sense of time travel. You know, or you have a love that is so intense that it warps the time and it opens doors for you because you're so intensely involved with it. And looking back, it's like, oh, that's when my time kind of warped.
Yeah, I feel.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just like casually having fun and whoops, time flies.
Yeah.
You know, like it just flew by. So that's why in the last show I said you have to fly with it. You can't just let time fly and let it pass you by. You know, so obviously like when you're young, you know, time does fly and you are having a lot of fun. But I've always thought of it like it's a trade-off. You know, let's say out of like on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like the set time you have. You know, if you do 50% work and 50% fun, that's like the average.
You feel like there's a balance?
Let's say there's an average, right?
Okay.
But let's say you do 90% work and 10% fun. That's a lot more work that you're doing compared to other people. But the 10% that you do have fun with is probably going to be way more intense than the 50-50 people, because you work that much for it and you probably set yourself up in a better environment. You know?
Okay.
Whether it's creatively or financially or whatever, right? You have to put more work in. Look at an athlete, for example, you know? In order to get to like the top tier, you know, league or whatever, you have to work way harder than anyone else.
Right.
But think about the reward that they get with the 10%, you know, free time that they get. They put in a lot more, but they get to enjoy it.
Okay.
You know?
Now, you mentioned that the line can be put up to interpretation in any form, in any way. I've always had this interpretation as to where, and I even mentioned that line in the class discussion, where my interpretation for it was, you know, if you're in love with somebody, if you're in love with someplace, sometime, if you put in all the effort and time slows down for you, you're able to, you know, push through and actually, like, you know, have fun with it, but at the same time put in all the work. Would that seem like the proper, or is it like it's any form of interpretation? Because
of course, that's just words that I said. I can't, you know, control what anybody thinks of the sequence of words that I put out. You know, that's what I mean by interpretation, whether it's lyrics or even a phrase or a quote. And I don't mean that facetiously. I really, honestly think, you know, your thoughts are just a reflection of what you're going through at that particular time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, but from my experience of just doing music and being able to tour and connect with people, you know, that live all over the world, I definitely every time I, you know, reconnect with somebody, it's like, wow, you know, the last time I was here was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and we're doing the same thing, but everything is slowly changing. You know, people grow up and they start different businesses, or they have kids now, and you know, it is kind of amazing. You know, that, you know, those are things that you don't really think about when you're in high school or college, but life moves on. You know, but again, like when you go back to the time that, you know, you created these songs, or, you know, involvement you had in the past, it kind of takes you back.
Okay.
So that's why I think it's kind of like a time capsule.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually going to finish off here. But before I'm going to ask a bonus question, hope you don't mind. But before I do, I just want to actually, again, I said this off camera, but I'm going to say it again. I want to thank you so much for actually taking time off your busy schedule to take part in this. It really means a lot. So yeah, it's okay. So to end this question, this is more something extra, something else, but it's more in the realms of music and the field of success. I've actually asked this question to Scholar about how he was able to make it in the position that he's in now. You know, like make music, put out albums, do shows. You know, and how was he able? What was his way of making it? You know, and I want to ask you the same thing, because nowadays artists, you know, growing indie artists, you know, such as myself, like, you know, we heavily rely on social media. Do you personally believe that social media is like the key component to exposure? And also, how are you, and the central question, how are you able to be in the position that you're in now? Just to come full circle of your career, how you're able to, you know, have all these people listen to your work and just enjoy it.
Well, so I'm gonna answer this in different sections.
Yeah.
Because of the last question.
Go for it.
Well, first off, success is very, very, very relative, right? So if I compare myself to a stadium touring band, then I'm a complete failure. right? And if I compare myself to somebody who can't make any living out of what they love, then I'm a great success, right? So there's always a balance of how you gauge your success or what you allow yourself in order for you to, you know, keep that self-motivation. Like, I'm gonna keep doing this. You know, and I always try to, like, you know, keep a good kind of balance between what I'm passionate about and what I need to be doing. You know, I mean, I don't do anything besides music or anything creative. I don't have a side job. Nor do I depend on anybody else financially. And I've never depended on my parents the moment after I graduated college.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I do take pride in that I do have this independent work ethic and that I receive from everyone that I look up to. Yeah? But I think that we as fans and artists alike, we look at the creative industry as some magical thing. You know what I mean? Like, we're no different from people who make furniture or, you know, ceramics or open restaurants or run whatever business. You know, you always have to cover the bottom line and then invest in yourself. And of course, keep promoting. That's a very key component. Use whatever tool that's available to you so that you can keep generating your business.
Okay.
Right? So whether it's like grassroots, the money comes from your audience, direct from your target audience, and you collect them, or the money comes from the top somehow, you get sponsored or you get funds or grants, that's all up to you, like how you want to run your business, right? Like, even being a musician, you have musicians that are independent, right, grinding, you know, touring 56 states every year, and there are musicians who work as studio